like I was never an anti-vaxxer. You know, I'm a nurse, so like they're giving me this shot and that shot and, you know, flu shots. And I even worked the flu shot clinic. I was never an anti-vaxxer, but there was something different about this time round where it was weird. And so I remember it was the pharmacist at my work. And she understands pharmacology and she really understands. And she's like, no, mRNAs are different. And I'm like, what's an mRNA? And then, you know, she explained to me that this was biotech and, you know, nanolipid particles are very, very small. And this isn't grandma's polio vaccine. This isn't your hepatitis vaccine. This is a different animal altogether. Everything changed overnight. You know, they turned our hospital into tent city. They were putting up these walls with zippers and duct tape. And this was the red zone and the yellow zone and the green zone. And it seemed to violate everything I had learned about microbiology. I'm like, well, once you open the zipper, the air is coming with me. 2 months later, you know, we hear these rumors about these trucks coming to Ottawa. And I'm like, babe, it's like nudging my husband. You heard about these trucks? These trucks are coming. They're coming from Fort St. George. They're coming from all over the place. We should help. What can we do to help? And then that was the beginning of an extraordinarily life-transforming process.
Good morning, Bethan.
Good morning, Tammy.
So this is Bethan Nodwell. We met a couple of months ago. It wasn't that long ago, right?
No.
I can't tell time because we move so fast.
That's
I can't
right.
tell any time. But we came together because you brought a very important podcast guest to my studio, and we had dinner together later. And you were like bubbly, telling us stories. Jordan and I looked at each other. She'd be a good podcast guest. Yes, she would. So I asked you and you said yes.
Of course.
I said, here you are.
Of course.
So tell everyone just who you are, and we'll start back when you were still employed in Canada in a regular job.
Okay. I know. Well, I mean, I'm old now, and so I've had a few different careers. So my name is Bethan Nodwell, and my most recent career embodiment was being a nurse. And I became a nurse once I had my second child, and I was working in a small town Quebec hospital, kind of minding my own business, loving healing, loving nurturing, loving medicine. I have a family of doctors. There are doctors in my family, and there was a culture of respect and admiration for medicine. And I always felt out of the loop. I didn't understand the language of, you know, doctors. And so once I was accessed into the portal by going to nursing school and then realizing like all the tricks to their language, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, I thought you were so smart, but it's really not that complicated once you get in there. So, you know, I became a nurse. I have 2 biological children, 3 stepchildren. So my husband and I are officially outnumbered. We have 5 kids that we are responsible for caring for, providing for, and loving and raising in this crazy world. And so that was a lot, you know, he was a pilot. I was a nurse. We were going on about our lives, trying to raise our little tribe. And then COVID struck, and that changed the game, right? It was like an asteroid that hit our lives.
That's the thing, isn't it? That changed everything. We hear that now so often, and that changed everything, because it really did. It really did. And so did it change things for both you and your husband at the same time, or how did that go?
Well, you know, it kind of like I was never an anti-vaxxer, you know, I'm a nurse. So like they're giving me this shot and that shot and, you know, flu shots. And I even worked the flu shot clinic. I was never an anti-vaxxer, but there was something different about this time round where it was weird. And we had to take our vaccines, but we were kind of happy to do so. But in this case, there was a slight different change in tone, and like there was an authoritarianism in it. This time it was like, you have to. And so I remember it was the pharmacist at my work, and she understands pharmacology, and she really understands all of this. And she goes, I'm not touching that. And I'm like, why? Well, I'm just a dummy, right? And she's like, no, mRNAs are different. And I'm like, what's an mRNA? And then, she explained to me that this was biotech, and, nanolipid particles are very, very small. And this isn't grandma's polio vaccine. This isn't your hepatitis vaccine. This is a different animal altogether. And then I started doing a little bit of research, and then I started feeling a bit apprehensive and reluctant myself. And then the pressure just kept on coming from, the public health and the hospital. So I would go home and talk to my husband about it. I'm going like, well, what should we do? And he's like, I guess we're going to have to do it eventually. And I'm like, well, let's just hold on. Let's just wait. And we turned into let's just wait. Let's just see. And then it wasn't too long after, I guess, when COVID struck. I mean, it did strike me with some terror. I didn't know. Everything changed overnight. They turned our hospital into tent city. They were putting up these walls with zippers and duct tape. And this was the red zone and the yellow zone and the green zone. And it seemed to violate everything I had learned about microbiology. I'm like, well, once you open the zipper, the air is coming with me. So it didn't make sense. And so, my husband and I just kept on saying, let's wait. And then the further we waited and the more we waited, the more sort of the resentment and vitriol and anger started coming at us via, be it through friends, family, community, colleagues, the prime minister. And now we're like, this is, I don't know if you're this kind of person, but if you get pushed too hard, then you're like, fine, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it now just because you are pushing me, and let's see what you do. And so, yeah. And I was learning about early therapeutics, and I heard about hydroxychloroquine. Someone who is in Vera Sharov's documentary, his name is Dr. Zev Zelenko, and he explained the mechanism of action for hydroxychloroquine and zinc and how they work together. And I was like, okay, well, this makes perfect sense. Okay, guys, like, no panic. We don't need to panic. We don't need to shut down the world. We have some treatment options here. And then they were talking about budesonide, and there were, possible medications that could be repurposed to treat COVID. And so I'm like, guys, we don't have to panic. But the panic was sort of happening without me. And that's when I started to feel further and further removed from the world, because I wasn't enrolled in the story, and I wasn't enrolled in the allegations that they were making. And I definitely wasn't enrolled in lining up. And then that was sort of the beginning of our sense of isolation from the rest of the world. And, and then we went into lockdowns. And that was tough because I went to work anyways, hospital, like the show just keeps going. My husband did stop working because, there were no flights in and out of Canada. And so, and then our kids were removed from school because, the schools were locked down, and then mask mandates, and it was it was causing rashes on our children's faces, and they hated them. And they were so disgusting, their masks, when they came home. They were just dirty and grimy and covered in like strawberry sauce. And it was like, what is this? What are we doing? So, it was very difficult. And I did at one point just say, like, I cannot continue like this. I can't live under a mask. When you work with senior citizens, they need to hear you. They need to see your mouth moving. It's part of dementia. It's part of being deaf. And, as the elderly lose their hearing. And so when you're like, womp, 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 you're a Charlie Brown school teacher, right? And like, poor grandma, she's already confused. She's in the hospital and I'm talking with a womp, womp, womp and in French. And, I know it was poor grandma. She was so confused. And then I was always in trouble for like mask delinquency. The boss was like, come see me in my office right now. Cause I'm like there with my mask on my chin going, oh, is it this? Yeah. Am I in trouble for this? So I was just constantly in trouble. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave for now and wait until the storm passes. And then I'll return back to nursing because I love taking care of people. I love one of the best parts about nursing and particularly emergency room nursing is that person is a barrel going over the Niagara Falls. Mm-hmm. And you and your team are throwing a line across Niagara Falls. And if you pull it just tight enough, we might be able to stop that barrel from going over. Maybe not every time, but we might. And if we have a really good captain, our chances are really good that we're going to win this and we're going to save that person. So, that's what I loved about nursing is kind of, being there in the storm and you're there to catch somebody in the middle of their worst moment, potentially of their lives. And it's like, it's okay. We got you. We're going to do the best we can and we're going to get through this. Hang on. And you felt like you need purpose in life. That was purpose. I had value. I showed up to work and I made the difference for people. I loved that. But I couldn't handle the working conditions. I couldn't handle the pressure of the vaccine. I couldn't handle the relentless masking. And we worked 12, 16-hour days and I was under that thing all day long. I just, and then, there was a spirit of rebellion kind of coming out in me. And, I'm like, you can't make me. You're going to try, but you can't make me. And so that's it. So I left. And then 2 months later, we hear these rumors about these trucks coming to Ottawa. And I'm like, babe, it's like nudging my husband. Have you heard about these trucks? These trucks are coming. They're coming from Fort St. George. They're coming from all over the place. We should help. What can we do to help? And then that was the beginning of an extraordinarily life transforming process.
So did you follow the trucks across Canada then? Because you caught it right at the beginning by the sounds of it.
Well, yeah, I heard rumors online. And then there's this guy, his name's Pat King. And, he's like really big and loud personality. And, some love him, some hate him. It doesn't matter. But I started watching his lives and he'd be like, okay, folks, this is how we use CB radios. These are call signs. This is what we do. And this is so exciting. Like they're doing call signs and they're coming. And it felt like we were being rescued. We were looking to politicians to rescue us. I mean, and honestly, I was actually looking to your husband and you guys were sick at that time.
Yes.
When COVID hit,
we're so out of it.
You guys were like, it was like mom and dad are gone. I don't know where they are and I don't know when they're coming back, but they're not here right now to just speak some wisdom into this time because everybody was so scattered and frantic and there was nobody speaking in grounding terms. They were speaking in ultimatums and in extremes. And so, so it ends up being that these kind of burly working class dudes are going, all right, Marge, give me my keys. I've had enough. We're going to Ottawa. And and so I started following their lives. And then, there was a network of people, like we were definitely fringy people at that time, but in my church and we were like, the trucks are coming, how can we help? And that's where we kind of started to organize. And it was, it was not organized. We were just a bunch of like good-hearted, willing people that wanted to help. And we're like, we'll do their laundry, and we'll get them shuttle drivers, and we'll do this, and we'll help them with parking. We had no idea. No idea. Yeah, right. You guys just all park along Wellington. How about that? And so I know. So, and then, and it was incredible. And then the horns were so loud, and to me, it was a cry of freedom. I whenever I hear a truck horn sound now, I'm like, like, it's the sound of freedom to me. I love it. I would almost stop at a green light in front of a truck just to hear them honk now. And love it, guys. But I don't. I try and go when it's a green light. That was incredible.
You said you were working through your church.
Yeah.
Now, I thought the churches were closed. So.
Oh, not Bikers Church.
Oh, this is when you moved churches.
Yes. So in Quebec, they had mandated, I think they let us know in November that come January, the unvaccinated will no longer be allowed to attend church. And at that point, that was the only thing we had. We got to go out on Sundays, you end up making a big deal out of grocery shopping, right? Because it was your chance to get out in the world. But, church was the only time that we got to spend in community. And we were at a church where we had to register, and they'd hand us masks with tweezers, and I wore them, I was resigned, but at least I got to be in community. I got oh, how you doing? How are you? But then we were told, no, sorry. Come January, the unvaccinated can only do church from home. And, and I was just heartbroken, and I was crying in the church basement, and I was mad, and I was just like, how dare you not defend us? People were losing their jobs, and we were just going through so much, and you're kind of thinking, at least the church will stand up for us. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. And in this case, this church didn't. And so they were just complying. They were going to comply their way out of this. And so that's when, ear to the ground. And I heard, it was funny, we were scrounging for ivermectin, right? Ivermectin was the antiviral that everybody needed. And to get them in pill form was one thing, but you could get animal grade. And that was the same molecule. So I didn't care if it was in a paste or a liquid or a gel topical, I needed to get it. And I heard that there was this church called Bikers Church, Vanier City Bikers Church in Ottawa, and you could get ivermectin there. And I'm like, so that's what happened. And so my husband and I went hunting for ivermectin at Bikers Church. And it's an old Catholic church. I think it was built in the 1950s. And it's gone through a series of owners. And it was this gorgeous building. And I walked in, there was no registration table. There was no hand sanitizer. You had to hand sanitize anytime you opened a doorknob, right? So there was no hand sanitizer. There were no masks. There was no registration. We walked in and it was normal life. Nobody was wearing a mask. Well, maybe one person over there was wearing a mask, but for the most part, nobody was. And there was free coffee, and there was an incredible band, this worship team. And I was like, babe, what have we landed into? And then in the corner of my eye, I see this guy, and I'm like, like nudging my husband. I'm like, that's that Danny Bulford guy. That's the RCMP guy. That was Trudeau's detail. Like, he's here. This is too good. And, that's where I met with him right away. And he were like, nursing, policing. And it was instant. And then, maybe 8 weeks later, the convoy hit, and the bikers church ended up being like a center ground. I mean, it's a little away from downtown core Ottawa, but it was somewhere because downtown was so noisy and there was so much like horns and drama and partying that it was nice to just get to a refuge of the church and it would be quiet. And all of these church ladies were making soups, and like there was casserole, there was food all the time. And so truckers would often just go there to get away for a little bit, maybe grab a shower, grab a meal, get some prayer, get grounded, dry off your mittens, and then go back out there. So, and they were just so incredible and loving with everybody who walked through those doors. And that became my family. That was, and now that's my church. Those are my people. And I didn't think that, like, I'm not a biker. Do I look like a biker? Maybe. Maybe I could like put on a helmet and pretend, but maybe we'll try something new.
That's right.
Right. But now these are definitely salt of the earth, beautiful people who would give you the shirt off their backs. And
who were the bikers? What kind of bikers were these? Like afternoon bikers, or were these solid bikers?
Well, I think originally it was founded by sorry, Hillbilly. His name was Hillbilly, who started it.
No.
Yeah, he's got it, and he's got the long white ZZ Top beard, and he's like, "Hello, darling," and he's got his vest with all the patches. So he his wallet is attached to a chain, which is attached
perfect
to the pocket, right? So that's the look, and loves his Harleys. And so it was founded by him, and he has this incredible testimonial. I mean, both his parents were deaf. And so can you imagine being raised by deaf parents? One of his stories is about like not having a concept of volume. So when he first went to school, they kept on telling him to be quiet, but at home he could make as much noise as he always wanted, right? His whole life. And so he was always in trouble. And then his life took a lot of serious bad turns. And then I think he became part of the Outlaws. I don't think he was an HA, but a Hell's Angel. I don't think he went that far, but he was definitely, I think he was part of collections, and I think he was, up to some nefarious dealings in his youth, and drugs and alcohol. And then, had a transformative experience with God, and then really got into the Bible, and then turned his way around. And he's got an incredible wife, Nelia, and they've been together forever. She's a legit biker's wife. And biker's wife turned church lady. And so they started this little church. They took over the building, and now Pastor Rob and Melissa McKee have taken it over. And so every Sunday, there's a lineup of bikes, in front of the church. They're all sort of and they're all shiny and in good shape. One person brings a Vespa. So it's like a bunch of Harleys and a Vespa. So we don't discriminate. If you want to show up with your e-bike, you're going to be welcome. You can park it alongside all of the bikes.
Has it become more notorious, like more famous? Or is it still pretty local? It's becoming famous?
It's famous. I think, they've done a few controversial things. So they took a hard line against COVID. They were a pretty hard line against, we can say, the LGBTQ agenda. So, and now they've taken a pretty hard line in support of Israel. Okay. And so in all of these, scandals, they're choosing a side and they're sticking to it. So, as they say, come hell or high water, this is what we're doing. And you have to just stand for what you believe in. And that is who they are. And so, yes,
what does that do for you? What does that do for you to stand for what you believe in? What do you think that does for you?
Well, look, when you stand up for what you believe in, you have to be prepared that you may lose everything. And it could mean losing your community. It could mean losing your friends, family. Having these convictions meant there were many, family related things that I was not invited to. Definitely friend circle things. They're going, oh, we want you to do a PCR test before you come to our Christmas party. That's going to be a no from me, dog, like not doing it. So that makes you unpopular, instantly unpopular. It was a frustration to the administration of the hospital because they always found me with my mask around my chin. I'm like, well, I'm trying to talk to grandma and she's deaf, but whatever. Fine. I'm bad. Yes. I'm irresponsible. Fine. So, taking this line and doing what you believe, it has a high price, but the payoff, when they say God turns all things into good, that all of the mess, all of the nightmare, everything Justin Trudeau threw at us and Theresa Tam and Omar and Freeland and the lot of them, we've managed to take it and turn it into good. Like what the lockdowns were, I think, inherently evil. And yet the convoy was a way of us flipping it and turning it into good. The disasters of what happened, we never would have met Christine Anderson. We never would have reached out to Vera, which meant we never would have met you. And so there are all these things that happened. Even when Trudeau, remember when he brought Hunka, the Nazi SS soldier from, oh my God, I felt kind of sorry for the old man because he was just being he's 98 being dragged into this nightmare. But it was, it was a catastrophe. And yet we could somehow turn it into good. So if you hold to your convictions and you're willing to hold, as we say, hold the line, and you can hold it no matter what tomatoes and mud is thrown at you, you end up coming out with your integrity is intact, which makes things in life work. And you come up with a resilience and a resolve that it's going to be a lot harder to push us over again. Right. So I just keep on seeing the blessings that come out of it. I think it was one of the first things I said to you. I'm like, I'm going to write Trudeau a thank you letter at this point, because here I am talking to you guys. If it weren't for him, I'd never be here. I'd still be in a hospital, changing people's depends. So it's not that there's anything wrong with that, and it's important work, but I would be in a completely different place had this pressure not been put on us. And my pastor and I were talking about that, like olives in an olive press. When you're squeezed, what is coming out of you? Mm-hmm. Is it like this beautiful olive oil, or is it resentment, bitterness, right. anger, so we just we were pressed hard, and what came out of us? Community, love, the realization that we can raise $10 million in a week twice if we have to. We didn't know we could do that. I don't think anybody knew we could raise that kind of money. And so there was something that came out of the pressure that we were put under, and we didn't appreciate it, but there was something very beautiful that came out of it. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. That, yeah. Oh, it was hard. And when the Freedom Convoy landed, it was mm-hmm. the best Canada Day I'd ever experienced in my life. It was winter, Woodstock. Like everybody was throwing their masks off and they were hugging each other and didn't even know each other. And it was just like, I love you and no, I love you and I love you. And I'm so happy. So, and where are you from? You're from Abitimiskaming, and I'm from, I'm from Tuktoyaktuk. And there were like grannies coming from up north, and people coming from Nova Scotia, like all of this. And like, where are you from? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so glad you're here. And tears, and everybody had been traumatized by the lockdowns, by the mandates. They'd lost their jobs. Their kids were sick. Their kids were like depressed, or, everybody had been going through this nightmare. And we found each other in this like miraculous way. And it was 3 weeks of, I know for maybe some local residents, they were very unhappy with that. But, for those of us, it was our emancipation. We were freeing ourselves, and we weren't going to wait for Jagmeet, Pierre, or Trudeau to do it for us. We were actually going to free ourselves. Thank you very much. And, and what happened to Trudeau? Like, he ran away. He got COVID. He hid under his bed. And then he got called away to a very important meeting in Europe. He's like, I got to go. So he ran away. But we just found this power amongst ourselves. And I still don't know if the convoy was the birth of our nationalism, like true nationalism.
It looked like it to me.
Yeah, or whether it was like a Viking funeral pyre of the death of the country our ancestors built.
Oh, that could be too.
It could be too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. It kind of looks like the death. No, right now.
Right but now.
Whatever.
I know.
I'll keep my hopes up.
I'm eternally optimistic too, but all of us, even when the convoy was, crushed and everybody was sent home and we were scattered and demoralized, we all have First Nations culture. They have the fire keepers, and they keep this ember inside of a leather pouch, and they carry it. And so they're always starting the fires wherever they go. There was an ember that we all carried inside of us after that. And we still have that. I still talk to, I was talking to a truck driver in northern BC, and he was talking about the ember inside of him. And I was talking to a friend in Nova Scotia. She's got so we all still carry this little flame inside of ourselves of hope and optimism and the dream that, we're in the process of fixing this, but it's going to be a longer process than we realized.
So they arrived in Ottawa, and it was a celebration for most people. Not everyone, but most people. Everyone. But you can't expect it to be everyone, so that's just not going to happen. And the press, of course, they talk to the people who are unhappy.
Oh yeah.
instead of the thousands of people who were happy. And then what was your part once the trucks arrived?
So initially,
and how did that happen?
Well, so we had a headquarters at the Swiss Hotel in Ottawa, and it was just like a circus, and it was like all these varying levels of competence. Danny was there, Bulford, and he was our liaison with the police, and bless his heart, he was documenting all his phone calls. My phone was just blowing up, but I wasn't documenting anything. I was just like, but he's such a professional. And Thomas O'Connor was there. He was a retired medic. Well, not retired. He was a medic who hadn't been at work for a few years due to the mandates. And, there were a few really competent people. There was a guy named Jason, and he was a contractor foreman guy, but he was also like a football coach and a soccer coach. He was just this really handsome, super football dad. And he was like, okay. And foremen are the kind of guys who are like contractors. They just get it done. So, and, you could see that he was excellent at what he did. And so initially, Thomas and I thought we were going to be the medics. We're like, okay, we're just going to be the medics. And, but as it turned out, they needed a stage. Well, we needed somewhere to stage and somewhere for the speakers to be at. And nobody seemed to have a hold of that. And because in my past, I used to sing, I studied music in university, at Concordia. I wasted a lot of my parents' money on my formal education. It was in the 90s. So
I don't believe any of that is a waste. I don't believe that.
Well, maybe not music. Music was like saving me, but I took a lot of the women's studies. I did take a lot of that stuff.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, now you know about it though, because
don't tell Jordan.
I went into sciences. I went into sciences, and I just didn't do any feminist work at all. And now I had to learn about postmodernism, and I've had to study feminism and all of that. Right. So I don't know. I think it's useful to know about it, because then you know what you're opposing. Right. Well,
now I do. And you could see that. I mean, that's another conversation, but you could see in the 90s when I was in women's studies in university, the seeds that were being planted and being developed to what it's like the monster that it's become today. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, you could see that like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Sure. I could see it in the 80s when I was there. So it's been coming from the philosophy department from 1980. It's been coming through the university.
The
80s. Now it's everywhere.
The 80s were like 25 years ago, right? Like that's...
Or more than that, even.
I know. I know. So, I know when they say
it's a whole lifetime ago, actually.
It's like 40 years ago or something like that. Oh my gosh. I'm not ready to have that conversation. But
so anyway, so you were holed up in a Swiss hotel.
Yeah. And everybody's like, I think we were all overjoyed, but, nobody really knew how this was going to unfold. And so they needed help with the stage. And so, we rented this team, formally paid for this team that does all the Canada Day audio. Cause I'm like, okay, we're going to need major sound systems to travel. And it was like costing a fortune, and we were going to get live stream cameras. And so we paid for those guys. And so I remember the first Saturday everybody landed on the Friday, and it was a bit of a party, but it was kind of game time as of the Saturday morning. And so I was there with the audiovisual team at 8 a.m. It's freezing cold, all winterized. And we need to drive our van onto Wellington. And the cops, they were like, do you have a permit? Do you have this? I'm like, well, I have this and I have that. And they're like, no, can't do. No, you have to wait. And they made us wait until about 10 o'clock. And at that point, we really weren't, there were so many people. I'm like, well, now it is dangerous to drive. Actually, we cannot drive through this crowd of people. And so the audiovisual guys were like, bye, we'll see you later. And so I ended up getting a hold of this man. So now I'm there on the street with no audio visual. And his name was Rob Stocky, and he was a former police officer, and he had audio visual. And so I got Jason, who was the foreman guy, and we ran down to Rob Stocky, and we had a wagon, and we wagon wheeled the audio visual equipment through the crowd. I had a megaphone. Oh, excuse me, pardon me, coming through. And we got to Boom Truck Ben's stage, which was this big, it was like a crane. And he had the flag hanging from it, looks like a big disco ball. He had the flag hanging from it. And we said, people were partying on it at that point, but we asked him, can we use this as the stage? Again, if we wanted to use risers on Parliament Hill, it would be a surcharge of $350. Right. And we're like, keep your risers. We're going to use the truck. It's bigger and better anyways. And so, yeah, we got our gear up on there on the first day, and it was bam, we had truckers talking, and bam, local, it was Laura Lynn Thompson and Ezra Levant and Maxime Bernier and all of these politicians, and and everybody wanted to get on the stage. And then within 2 days, of course, those foremen, they had built us a staircase, because up until that point, like, the boys were dragging us onto this big truck, and it was totally dangerous, total hazard. And that was where it now was going to be, where we were sending our message. And my only rule is that, it wasn't that we weren't going to talk about how COVID affected us, but we weren't going to get into the stories, like the depressing stories, because our lives had all been ruined. Everybody had a tragic story. This needed to be about the hope that the convoy was giving us. And I remember I went back to the Swiss hotel one night, and Julie Panesi was there, Dr. Julie Panesi, and she was sitting with my friend Judy with her little daughter. And she said, "I've got an interview with Jordan Peterson in 2 days." And I'm like, okay, here's what we need to ask him. What are we going to do? Here's my question. How are we going to handle this? Can you pass it on? And I remember that interview got kicked out pretty quickly, almost by the Wednesday. And he's like, well, be playful, make sure, keep it fun, keep it light. And I'm like, I can do that. I can keep it playful. I can keep it fun. I can keep it light. And that's sort of how it became. And we started bringing more musicians and more artists. And there were poets and drummers, like native drummers. And next thing you know, there was this guy with a tuba. And he just kept on showing up every day with the tuba. So it was like, we had the tuba guy. And then we had the bagpipe guy over there. And I'm like, okay, we got the bagpipes. We got the Indian drums. We got the tuba. I think we have it all. And so it turned into that. And we ran the stage from 10 a.m. Well, even earlier, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The men would take down all the equipment, put it in the back of one of the trucks. And we did that every single day, rain or shine.
For how long? For how long did this go on?
3 weeks. We were there for 3 weeks.
Wow, that's quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've done gigs before, but they last one night, and then you get to recover, and you get to have your tea. Oh, I had a big night last night. It's again. I don't care if it's cold. Get a new jacket.
And this is the coldest part of winter.
Oh my gosh. It was the coldest part of winter. And, if you're part of conspiracy theory circles, we were just oh no, there's weather modification and they've turned the fans up to 11. We are freezing in here. And so, but that was it was actually, I remember.
Was there a place to warm up on the truck?
Yeah, so we did. We actually, and that was the ingenious. People became ingenious.
Well, you have to, or you starve, or you freeze to death.
Freeze to death. Yeah, exactly. So we did. We ended up having a tent, and because Jason was a foreman, he got this massive heating thing with a propane tank, and it was and it melted our snow pants. Everybody had snow pants that looked like Freddy Krueger, right? It was what has happened to my pants? And it was well, it's that or get warm. So here we are. So
Canada is such a bizarre place in the winter. I
know, it's nuts. And then by the end of it, everybody had been parked there for about 3 weeks. People started putting little civic numbers by their trucks. So, it was starting at 0 from Parliament Hill, and it would go up to 100. And so by the time you got to the little red Volkswagen Beetle, that's number 48. And they were starting to put little planters in their windows and a little welcome mat outside their car. It was we were now a village, right? And and we were going to start getting mail delivered at one. If we stay here too much longer, we're going to get mail delivered.
And did the trucker, the feeling of the crowd? What was the feeling among the truckers during all that 3 weeks? Did it change or get better or worse? Or
well, I always think that, there was sort of an administrative side. There were people kind of down at the Ark Hotel, and I know for sure that there was plenty of drama and infighting and that kind of thing. A lot of chiefs, not a lot of Indians kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't really involved in that because I was just outside on the stage, with my clipboard going, "You're up next. Keep it snappy." Make it happy. No sad stories.
Okay, what do you think that your keeping it happy and light and fun did for the place? Do you know?
Well, I mean, there were these incredible moments, right? So when we were keeping it happy, I remember the moment when there was threats that they were going to take our jerry cans. And so what we did is we flooded the whole hill with jerry cans, and some were banging them together and they were empty. And some people were like carrying them like this and they were full. And then they all went onto Wellington Street and scattered. And so it was impossible for the police to go, okay, well, that jerry can's full and that one's empty and that one's, so that was this incredible moment. And everybody was like, yay, we outsmarted them. We've got our gasoline. We had diesel in yellow, jerry cans and, gasoline in red, because you don't want to mix that up. And I'll definitely grab the clip because they've used it in Tamara and Chris's trial, and it's from his TikTok. But where I was saying, like, this is our hill, this is our Juno Beach, this is our Dieppe. We are holding the line. And everyone's like, yeah, and these streets are going to be cleaner than the city of Ottawa could have ever made these streets. And the guys are like, yeah, and there are a lot of blue collar workers. And what do we need? We need shovels. And so people would donate shovels, and the streets were meticulous. Nobody's going to slip. Nobody's going to fall. No one's going to break their leg. There's going to be no reason to shut this down. Mm-hmm. And, everybody needs a job to do. And so they were guys, and it was slushy and muddy and all these things. And the streets were meticulous. Mm-hmm. And then over time, all these incredible creative posters, they started lining the Parliament Hill gates, right? And it was almost like going through, an art gallery. Because, from the most basic, little children, thank you, truckers, and these really kind of complicated, sophisticated pieces of artwork, and profound poems, and people who had lost loved ones in the lockdowns. There were photos of them. So it ended up being this really deep, moving art gallery that we would go by every day. And so, yeah, that was the spirit of it. And the musicians, they just kept coming. Actually the caliber of talent every weekend started increasing. And we had these doctors who were there, God bless them, who came up onto the stage, and they have the scientific knowledge about mRNAs, about COVID, about, procedures and protocol and informed consent. They know all this stuff. And the truckers don't know all this stuff, but they knew somehow inside that what was happening was wrong. And these doctors are going, your intuition was correct. What they are doing is unethical. It violates, HIPAA, our responsibility to do no harm. I mean, even if all of the vaccines were benign, which I don't believe they were, even if they were, one of our responsibilities is not to put a patient in the corner like this. You have to give them the choice, even if it's a blood transfusion and they really need it. You can't force them to have a blood transfusion. Mm. And if they say anything but the blood transfusion, it's going to be okay, well, we're going to have to do everything we can except doing a blood transfusion, because that's what the patient needs. It psychologically affects people to force them into taking an injection or taking a medication. And these doctors just started surrounding the truckers going, thank you for standing up for us so that we can stand up for you. Is it really extraordinary kind of, because it's classism, right? There's the blue collars And then, there's the academic class, right? And medicine falls under that. And as a nurse, I am blue collar grunt because I work 16-hour days, but I also have access to the medical knowledge. So I have access to that information world. And so I always felt like a bit of a bridge between the two like classes, and they don't necessarily get along well. Like, a bunch of truckers might not like hanging out with a bunch of professors for too long. And the professors might be done with the blue collar conversation after they're like, thank you. Okay. Same joke. Got it. So, like there is a degree of not mixing, but in that moment, we were able to have like this meld of classes. And that it was like the doctors were like to the truckers, I have your back, and the truckers to the doctors, I got your back, and we need each other. And that was a gorgeous experience. Seeing Albertans and Quebecers come together, where Albertans have been so, and I understand, we're taking all like your hard-earned tax money and it's say coming to my province of Quebec, and it's not going into our roads, and it's not going into our hospitals, and it's not going into our education. So where is all your hard-earned money going? And so I can understand the resentment from Alberta going, you guys in the East, you just waste all our money, and you just take from us and you give nothing back. And I'm like, we take all your money and I don't even know where it goes. Like it's lining someone's pockets, but it sure ain't paving our roads. Gadunk, 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 as we're trying to drive through Pot Hill City, right? Driving in Alberta is like driving in the state of Texas. It is such smooth driving. And then you get to Quebec and it's like, gaga, I think I lost an axle somewhere down the road. Like I think my hubcap came off.
Yeah. Toronto is exactly the same. I rode my bike and it hurt my bum so much. I couldn't really sit down very well for about a month because there were so many potholes.
Right?
It's terrible.
You live life on your side after that. Yeah. No.
Yeah. That's right. I went to visit my dad recently on Vancouver Island. He's in a old folks home, and they're all wearing masks, right? Because Bonnie Henry in BC has decided that the elderly again aren't going to be able to communicate with anybody anymore. Right. And so, it's so terrible that they're doing this again. How dare they do this again?
And
so there's more work to be done still.
I know. And it's always to our seniors. I mean, that was,
and children.
That was hard. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's very, and isn't that brave, eh? To punish the elderly and the children. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's real brave. Yeah.
Yeah. The most defenseless part of and they are the most defenseless members of our population who we have the responsibility to protect. And, we're protecting them into their own madness. I mean, put people in solitary confinement. And if you are just on the verge of having dementia, keep them in solitary confinement and see the progress of your patient.
Yeah,
within
they go
a month.
Downhill so fast.
So fast.
Yeah,
that's
for sure. No, my dad was at home just with vascular dementia, not really terrible dementia. And then he got into a nursing home, and all of a sudden he had lots more people to talk to or to watch even. And it was way better for him. So it's good to be together, but not with masks on. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. So it was just this, it was a beautiful experience, and we thought the mandates were going to end. I remember my husband was officially fired during the convoy, and we were just thinking just a few more days and these federal mandates are going to break. Right. But he was fired for failure to provide, the necessary information. And so the convoy ended. My husband was fired. I had left my job, and we were going okay, well, now what?
Right.
Okay, God, what do you want to do with us now? But we somehow rallied it together, and And many people were in dire straits too. They'd spent a fortune. I know people had dumped their life savings into coming to the convoy to spend on hotels and fuel and helping others, buying food. People went through thousands of dollars. And then we come out just demoralized and hurt and betrayed. And like Danny's bank account had been frozen. A bunch of people at the hotel, their bank accounts were getting frozen. People were getting scared. So people started going like, I'm out and taking off. And so it took 8 more months of, pushing and we would do rallies. And then we started doing rallies at the border. Right. And we're just going to let's make the border agents agitated. And of all places, our first border rally was at Rainbow Bridge. And Rainbow Bridge is now in the news as of yesterday. So
I don't know what happened yesterday. What's going on?
Oh, there was and it's, the information comes in hot and heavy, but there was an explosion at the border. Oh, now, whether it was a vehicle, again, different television
electric car, maybe.
No, you should see it, Tammy. Wait till you see the footage. It was like Dukes of Hazzard. A car was coming full speed, hits a median, goes flying and explodes. And so people didn't know if it was an IED or, whether this was jihad or,
what's IED?
An improvised explosive device. I see. Which they had a lot in Afghanistan and that. So people didn't know. There was just a massive explosion at the border.
On the Canadian side?
Well, this is what the news wasn't getting straight. I think it was America heading towards Canada, but the initial reports was it was Canada headed towards America. Oh. I'm still not actually sure which direction it was coming, but there's 2 dead, and it was the 2 people in the vehicle and 1 injured border agent. And it's weird, the stories are is changing. So we're just going to wait until all the facts come out on that one. Yeah. But it was scary. It was like, oh gosh, is it happening? Are those terrorism attacks that they promised would happen? Are they happening now? And I'm not sure. So the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara was where we first did our rally, and we had American patriots meet Canadian patriots on the bridge, and we couldn't leave our country, and we were crying and exchanging flags, and the Border Patrol guys were freaking out because we were,
touching,
mingling, touching, yeah, all these dirty patriots. But America was so proud of us too. That was the other thing. They were like, well, look at you all over there. I'm so proud of my little baby sister up north, and they were, because they respect, they respect bravery and courage, and they respect, they have freedom. It's not just this empty word. It's actually in their blood, and it's part of their constitution, and it's part of who they are. I would have a New Hampshire license plate if I could. It says "Live free or die." That's my motto. I need that T-shirt. And so yeah, the Americans and the American Patriot movement, and who defended us while we were up there. Donald J. Trump, he said, oh, those Canadian truckers and the whole MAGA audience loved us. Thank you, DJT. And it was Christine Anderson. And I remember I was literally in the cold and I was listening to her video, and she was talking about, they gave me hope. And she's like, I needed hope. And those truckers gave me hope. And those lights shone across not just Canada, but over the seas and all over the world. And you inspired all of us. And I'm like, who is this lady? And how do I get a hold of her? And yeah, and so that was part of like the after chapter of the convoy, and then we went to Europe, and we came to see the Dutch farmers with our Canadian flags going, hi, like we're part of the convoy, and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, you guys are the convoy, and so we're doing flag exchanges and exchanges between flag exchanges between veterans. That was like bawl your eyes out. Where 80 years ago, you know, Canadians emancipated the Dutch, right? In the Second World War, not to overstep our role, but we played a huge role in the emancipation of the Dutch from the Germans. I mean, we get tulips all the time for what we did for the Dutch.
Yeah, Ottawa is just full of tulips.
Full of tulips. I love tulips.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that comes from that like relationship. And so I often said that our ancestors are smiling on us for keeping those relationship ties going. And now we're bringing Eva Vlardingerbroek, I said it, to Canada, right? And so again, it's keeping that Dutch and Canadian alliance strong within the freedom movement. So yeah, like it's turned into something else completely.
What day is your Vancouver event?
So we start on the 26th. It's on a Sunday in Vancouver with Eva Vlardingerbroek and the beautiful, the talented, the prodigy, and Christine Anderson, member of European Parliament from Germany, freedom fighter. What did she say? Truth, democracy, and the rule of law. Those are her lines. That's what she wants. And so the two of them, we're bringing the two of them together to come across the country, and we'll do Vancouver on the 26th. And then we're doing Manitoba. We love you, Manitoba. You're flyover country, but we're coming to you. We're doing Manitoba on the 28th, and then we're going into the belly of the beast, and we will do Ottawa on the 29th and do a rally on the 30th in Ottawa. So,
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
This is very interesting.
Yeah, we're going to take the girls on an adventure. And I think we have everything from we've got a little convoy planned for them, so there's an adventure planned for them, a little bit of BC sightseeing, because the mountains, you can't miss that, right? You have to enjoy the Rockies. And then in Ottawa, I think we might pass by the Prime Minister's house, like maybe see the Governor General, Hong Kong. I wouldn't. No, he's not even there. It's a rat infested building now, right? He just let 24 Sussex rot, and now it's filled with pestilence. But so we do have some adventures planned for them, and then we'll go to the United States. But I'm really excited to bring these like powerful women of different ages with different life experiences, and yet here we are all on the same page. And I didn't know it was going to be women. Initially we thought it was going to be a man and a woman, but it turns out like the ladies are doing it. So we're taking
well, you know what, I think that it is up to us to do something for the good, right?
Tell me.
So I think
tell me what
great.
You think. What, like, because there's been a resurgence of the male, like, and I saw it during the convoy, how funny it was. We went to our traditional roles. I think I told you that at dinner time, how quickly we returned to our traditional roles. All of a sudden the guys are outside at 3:00 in the morning, checking on the engines. And we're like, okay, well, how about we make a lasagna over here? We're like, you go do that outside, honey. And, and I'll, make sandwiches. It was amazing how quickly we returned to roles. And, but it was partnership, and it was teamwork, and those Mennonite women, like where they were met in Manitoba, and then they came down to Ottawa. Oh my gosh. Like they can just mass produce food and like huge things of salad and huge things of chili and huge things. Oh my gosh. The Mennonite women have a lot to teach many of us who have lost those skills. I think we should start having like Mennonite, like online courses or something, and they can teach us how to can and get back to cooking, and get back to it and provide for our families.
Oh, I could talk about that forever. I could talk about that.
Right?
Eating whole foods instead of all these processed carbohydrates that are causing all this obesity and chronic disease.
Yeah, they're making us sick.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and to what degree is that real? And then where do you hit the conspiracy theorist line?
Right.
Right. And a lot of these things where we're talking about weather modification, what point is it actually true? And it's actually on the Canadian government website. And then where are we in the conspiracy theory with the vaccine? What point, are they safe and effective? And then what point do we hit a conspiracy theory line? And actually some batches or some brands might be extremely dangerous and we don't have long-term data for. Like all of these things, they actually have a line, and then you're in the tinfoil hat. And I'm sure that when it comes to food, you've got a full-on tinfoil hat. Don't touch it, don't eat it, don't even look at it. Don't get too close to it, because something will jump on you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I can
that's a whole
say,
other thing.
I watched you and Jordan when we went out for dinner. You guys are who you say you are.
We have hats on for sure.
When it comes to eating, they're not lying. I was kind of going, well, they're going to throw some Brussels sprouts on the nope. I saw Jordan go off, he was going wild and he had shrimp. He had some shrimp with a steak. But no, there was no greens anywhere. There was you guys had bubbly water and Vera and I were like, we'll have some red wine. We will drink on behalf of these two who cannot. So Vera loved it. So, they are who they say they are, guys. They are who they say they are. And I would love to talk with you about food. And I know your daughter's a food expert, and when it comes to raising children and what we're feeding them, because so many of these foods are designed to harm them on a level, our processed cereals and all of that.
Well, it's funny,
kind of stuff.
because just for a second, we've been celebrating manufactured carbohydrates in the form of potato chips and cheesies and packaged food of every kind. We've celebrated that, the convenience of it and the fun of having that to eat when you're watching a movie and stuff. It's all been, everybody was all happy about that. And then we decided we'd manufacture meat, and everybody went, wait a minute, that doesn't sound very good. Manufactured meat, what's that? But turned out we've been doing that all along. It was just the next step.
Right.
It was just the next step. So I'm really, I'm kind of hopeful that people have woken up to the idea of where we have gone, where we started from and where we have gone, and the end result, and thinking, oh, maybe it isn't just all of a sudden a radical idea to manufacture meat. It's been coming for decades. And so, and all the chronic disease, I've seen so many things in the newspapers and magazines about how meat causes diabetes, and that's such a lie. It's such a terrible, that's a big lie. That's lies. And how can they do that? Those lies. It's like, what
it's the sugar. Don't even get me started about sugar. I mean, I saw, in my limited, and this is all anecdotal, I get it. Yeah. It's not research and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But when I saw people with ferocious cancers, I remember one guy had tumors all over his brain. He just one day couldn't bang a nail. His depth perception was off, and then they gave him a scan, and he's littered. And what was the first thing his family brought in for him? A case of Coca-Cola. And and that was his thing, and I saw many cancer patients. And there has to be a thread, and I don't know how well documented that thread is, but I saw them riddled in cancer, and people were bringing them sugar. Yeah. And my understanding of that is that if you want to feed a tumor and you want to make it grow, give it more glucose.
That's right. So that's what it lives on. That's what it lives on. Yeah.
So the fact in hospitals in the morning, they're giving you orange juice. They're giving you like a sweetened yogurt. They're giving you jam on toast. They're giving you toast, white
that's
or brown.
just all sugar.
All sugar. And so it's like, here, cancer patient, we're going to do your chemo, but we're also just going to keep on giving the tumors the food that they need to keep going. Like, how does that?
That's crazy.
How do we square that away, right?
Yeah.
And
we could have a good long conversation about this.
Yeah.
We could, because you're a nurse, so that would be good. I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, anytime. I'll talk to you
about
anything.
About that.
Yeah, I know. That's your jam, right? So you guys are experts now. Your daughter's gonna get her doctorate in fooding. Yeah, right.
Knowing all we eat's one food. Drink water.
I know. Fooding with different degrees of dryness is basically what you guys do. It's like, oh, this is wet meat, and then this is dry meat, and this is really hard leather dry meat. Okay, guys.
Yeah, those are our three food groups, right?
I know. Yeah, you guys. Diversity is our strength, except when it comes to meat, and then we just keep it homogeneous.
Well, I hope you do. I hope you have a fantastic time. I think this is a great plan. It's such a good idea, because really what you've been through and saw such, I mean, you brought me to tears twice just in this conversation. It's,
really?
Yes. Oh, really? Wow. So I think, yes, really. Okay, so what you're doing now, it's like, keep that ember alive. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Keep that ember alive.
Yeah. And the freedom movement is like, I mean, we are looking at it now. Some of us who are perceived as leaders within the movement, and we are just like, oh my gosh, we're fractured. We're demoralized. We people now, like, initially it was the COVID pressure, and now it's the financial pressure, right? So inflation is actually starting to wipe out the lower middle class, right? Like wipe them out, drive them into homelessness. There are tent cities around here now that were never there before. No such thing. And now it's just full of tents, and it's a mess. And I'm like, where did all these people come from? They're being driven out of their homes. They have nowhere to live. And they were always on the line. These people were always like, ugh. And with this, extra increase in financial pressure, and it's, and so we're watching this happen around us, and watching the freedom movement infight, and this person's this person's a traitor, and that's an infiltrator, and they're a fed. That's like the worst thing you can call someone is a fed. And so and that, like, all of the things, and so there's a huge amount of distrust and infighting, and yet I was talking to Bern Buchert, who's in the Unacceptable movie. He's sort of featured in it. And, they did a fundraiser for him because he's headed to Ottawa next week to do his court proceedings. And, they did up in Northern BC, they did a fundraiser for him, and for his legal fees and for his court fees. And it was like, badam, in minutes, in a night, they had covered his entire legal fees. Like there's the Coots there's 4 guys in Alberta who were like just sitting 646 days in remand, not even jail. Like they're just in remand. It's like they're sitting in a drunk tank for 642 days. And one of those guys, despite everything, was on legal aid. And it was like, legal aid are, sitting there on their phone, and, they're not like the sharks. I'm sure your husband, when he's paid for his lawyers, it's like, okay, I'm putting money down, and now you guys are working for me, and you guys are going to work like animals, right? And you need fierce top shelf lawyers to get you out of this mess. And this poor guy is sitting there with legal aid, 642 days. I don't know if I'll ever see my children again.
Oof.
And, so some people within the freedom movement said, "Nuh-uh, not today, Satan." And within 6 days, we had raised $150,000 direct deposit to top shelf Alberta lawyer team. And they're like, great, deposit made, and we're good to go. And so this movement still has the power of community. And if we believe in something is a good idea, we can fundraise. Everybody's $20 in a hat.
Mm-hmm.
We have $10 million. It's incredible. And we don't realize the power that we have. We threatened, apparently Tony Fauci was supposed to come to Canada. He was supposed to come to Hamilton like this week. And, they were doing big fundraiser, and it was $20,000, for this kind of level of membership. And it was, $500 a ticket. And so the Freedomers are like, Tony Fauci, you say, huh? So he thinks he's coming to Freedom Convoy country because, this is where you're coming, buddy. And so we never threatened the institution or threatened him, but what we did is started organizing publicly. And it's like, okay, are we getting this truck? And are we bringing the speakers? And who are we bringing in? And oh my gosh. And next thing you know, we are organizing, and people are organizing naturally. They're like, okay, this is going to be our headquarters, and these trucks are coming, and blah, 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 blah. And it was actually I was really looking forward to it. It was going to be a great Freedomer party that we would have outside of their event. And we would just make sure we'd honked so that he knew that we were there.
Yeah.
But I don't know, 72 hours, maybe a week before he was supposed to arrive, they announced that due to scheduling, Tony was not coming.
Oh, good.
And so,
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to
hear
that.
Like, was it because of us? Was it something we said?
Kind of sounds like it.
Was it because we were going to have a party outside of your event? But, a lot of that is because they denied us the debate, right? They did from the very beginning, they denied us the COVID debate. And so now when Tony Fauci shows up, we're like, hi, we're still here for that debate. Hi, we're still here to talk to you. And he didn't make it. And I mean, look at Trudeau. He is the most imprisoned man in this country. He can't go anywhere.
So? Is that right? Nowhere.
Well, where can he go?
Nobody.
Can he go to a restaurant? Can he go to a restaurant? Now it's the Palestine thing, right? And so people are screaming at him, stop, ceasefire now. And, and he's just trying to eat. No, sorry, buds. And if he goes out in Ottawa, there's always the Wellington regulars. They're like, we live here now. And so they just live outside the Privy Council. That's where they just sit there. Oh. Yeah, no, there have been people who have never left the convoy, and they just live out on Wellington Street now. I mean, they go home at night, but they catch Freeland every time she's walking into the Privy Council. They catch Algabra. They catch them all. And then they've got their megaphones, and they're like, what do you think you're doing? You understand that we're still angry with you. And so they are now we consider ourselves free, to do what it is that we'd like to do. And, they are now in a position where they're very concerned that wherever I go, any restaurant, I can't go to a movie theater because there's going to be someone in the audience or multiple people in the audience who are going to be very unhappy with them. So that is and that's something they brought upon themselves. I cry, I weep not for them. And I know that perhaps you don't live a free life anymore,
No.
Where you once walked the streets in anonymity. And I guess
that's the way it goes.
It's less that now, good luck walking around with your husband with anonymity.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. What's funny though? It doesn't matter. We know that this is reality now, and that it isn't the same as it used to be. No matter where we go, the only place it matters is in the neighborhood we lived for 23 years. It matters there. And so that's no longer our neighborhood because we've changed too much.
Yeah.
And so that's too bad, but that's the way it is. So we'll deal with it over time. But George said, I said, no, it's been 7 years. It's not going to change back to the way it was ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you like bring pies over to your neighbors and like share muffins, or you just like,
Oh,
hi, Mrs. Johnson,
well,
just waved
it
across
was
the
better.
street?
It was better to say hello and have chats on the street and
Right.
to go into someone's house if they invited us than to knock door to door, because although George's welcome mostly on the street, there are some people who live in fear, right? They live in fear.
Right. Right. And they're
And you don't,
terrified
and you
that you
don't
guys
wanna,
are here because,
yeah, and you don't want to go
yeah.
and like make them more fearful. So,
Right. No, of course.
but you know,
Of
last
course. I
summer
mean,
we
yeah,
had
you're in a
we had a street party on our street last year, and my son was invited to
fun.
play at an open mic, and we went down there, and it was great, and we could go there. So sometimes
What does he play?
he plays
Is
the
he
guitar and
guitar?
sings. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Does
Yeah.
your daughter, is she musical too, or she doesn't do music?
She doesn't do so much
She-
music.
She's a researcher.
She's
her,
a
that's her
researcher.
jam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is
Yeah.
a researcher, man. She's really
Oh, yeah.
something. She's something.
Yeah.
If I have a question, I just have to ask her, and she
It's
digs
like-
down deep.
That's so nice. And she's like, I mean, not to compliment unnecessarily, but she's posted some pictures of her pregnant. And like, if I only wish I looked that beautiful when I was pregnant. I looked like I was expecting like triplet toddlers, I was just like moon faced and like, and she's just like, oh, I just have this little bump and I'm just gorgeous. And so like, you do pregnancy nice. You do it really nicely, lady. She looks beautiful.
She does. Yeah, she does. She looks beautiful. She's probably a little too skinny, but that's part of living this way. Is it's kind of
when you eat leather,
skinny life. Yeah.
Yeah, when you eat leather, what do you expect? Not a lot of extra pounds.
It's crazy
on that diet. But you guys have like clear blood work, and like you're really happy. Like your blood work is excellent, and I've heard like amazing things. Like who would have thought?
Who would have thought? I know, how bizarre is
just
that?
meat. Because I thought you'd have to throw some greens in there of something,
but
even just like iceberg.
Scurvy was caused because people ate meat, but they ate hardtack as well, and so the carbohydrates meant that they needed vitamin C. But if you don't eat any carbohydrates, you don't need any vitamin C.
Okay.
So you don't get scurvy. Yeah, who knew that? I didn't know that either.
And so what about something like vitamin D? Is that you guys get that strictly through the sun, or do you
if it's winter, I'll supplement it. I mean, all Canadians pretty much have to supplement vitamin D.
Because that was actually one of the sort of discoveries during COVID, is that vitamin D was far more essential, especially in like therapeutics for treatment of illness. People are, devastatingly low, like they're in a vitamin D trough.
Yeah.
And very few have adequate vitamin D levels. And if you can get those levels up, what it does for your immune system and your ability to fight disease, infection, and that kind of, and inflammation and that kind of thing. Who knew? It's something so simple, right? Vitamin D, it's simple.
But
it's cheap.
every Canadian in the winter should take vitamin D.
Right.
It's just a no-brainer. We don't get enough sun, so we have to supplement.
Okay,
and
we need to run that as a banner at the bottom. Every Canadian needs to take vitamin D.
That's right.
Signed, Tammy Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you agree, though? I agree.
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. We don't, but we're deficient everywhere. I mean, I literally have seen patients like, and they've just been stented, right? Like 6 stents. And the doctor is like, you're on Plavix for life, and you're on aspirin for life, and you're on this for life. And you need to turn your business around, buddy. And he's like, yes, sir. And it was terrifying, right? They went like, they pushed a wire up through their arm. They're terrified. And then, like they get back to the hospital, they still have like this high pressure device on their wrist because it's an arterial entry. So they have to make sure it closes. And what are they doing? Ordering KFC. I'm just like, okay, well, what are we, what are we going to do with you, man? Like, people are in so much trouble, and we're financially illiterate, and I think we're nutritionally illiterate, and we're politically illiterate. We are like, our literacy on things that matter is subpar, right? On, like, how does the judicial system work? How does our political system work? How does even like the RCMP work? How does nutrition work? How does paying our bills and paying our taxes work? Nobody ever teaches us any of these things. And
well, our education system isn't interested in teaching our kids anything anymore.
Were you a homeschooler kind of person? Like,
I wasn't. My kids went to school, but I'd tell you now, I would never send my kids to public school. No way. Not a chance. No. There's probably some good schools.
Is it because of the SOGI?
It's because...
What is it about the schools?
Well, their indoctrination. It's just indoctrination. And the teachers are trained at the Faculty of Education in a way that they don't have the proper message to send to our children. And you got to think, I interviewed this one woman, and she said, so you have a soup, and in it is chicken and vegetables and everything. But then there's something that's rotten in your meat. But it's just one little thing that's rotten in your soup. Are you going to eat that soup? Probably not. You're probably not going to eat that soup. So you send your kid to school, and the teacher's pretty good. And the school's really close by, so they can come home for lunch, and all their friends go there, and you think, oh, this is really good. And then you look at the curriculum, and you think, well, the curriculum isn't too bad. So that means there's something rotten in the curriculum. Are you still going to send your kids to school when there's something rotten going on there? Because you wouldn't eat it if it was in a bowl of soup. So think about it.
I mean, it's true. I know it's true. And I think about that, Ron, my son goes to it's actually a wonderful school for him particularly. But every morning, what do? We acknowledge that we are on unceded Algonquin territory. I know. And he's like, oh, Mom, they do the white guilt announcement every morning. And it's like, oh yeah. And then of course it's trans pride this and pride that. And my son's like, can I wear the Save Canada hat? And I'm like, well, you could.
Yes. Yes, if you want to. But you'll have, what we told our kids was, if you want to do something that's against the system, and if you feel that that's what you need to do, you have to realize that there will be consequences, and you have to pay for the consequences. But I'm not going to tell you not to do it, because if that's what's in your heart to do it, it's up to you, but just know there are consequences to your behavior. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's consequences. And I mean, I've watched what the Save Canada boys, that entire family, have gone through, again, when you're talking about having, your beliefs and holding to them. I mean, those boys hold to their convictions, and it comes in the form of throwing hot coffee. I was there when, these Antifa, they threw hot coffee on Josh. And even though he walks like a man, he's still 17. I think he was even 16 at the time. He's a boy. But that's how much they hate us. And then I was right there when Nick got hit in the eye. And then
were you there?
Oh yeah. And it was just a total circus, right? The head of QP is there going trans lives matter. And I'm like, you're head of a union. What does this have to do with you? But he's just that head of the QP guy, Fred Hahn, he's cabaret gay, right? And he's just his focus is so off. It's all about his sort of personal politics and not about his job. He'll be sorted out. I don't doubt it. That QP's, his days as president are numbered. But, and again, I saw them attack Nick, and then he's bleeding, and then, But there was something in Nick's eyes, like when the blood was coming, gushing down his face, and he grabbed that apple and he took a bite out of that apple, and then he turned to the cameras and it was like, peesh, 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 peesh. And I was like, okay, they got the shot. Okay, they got the shot of bloody-eyed Nick. And then, of course, the conspiracy theorists are like, that was fake blood. I'm like, no, that was real, and that was pulsing
Yes,
out of
it
his
was
eye.
real blood.
It was real, and those are real stitches. But I love those boys. They threw him in jail.
They threw him in jail.
Sure.
And they didn't throw the guy who assaulted him in jail. They didn't. Yeah. I know.
Yeah, no, this is our upside down world, right?
It's our upside down world.
We're getting thrown in jail first. And so,
so that's why we have
get
to
our
keep
bank accounts.
We have to keep our focus aligned with what's highest, so that we don't become confused, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's true. It is a faith question, because there were many times where, we're looking for a hero or for a something, somebody rescue us. And we get to this place of going, but God, and that is sometimes all you have is, they've taken everything from you, but they cannot take your relationship with God away from you. And that might be the only thing that's going to ground you for this period of time. And through all of the storms of everything, it's been the community that we've created at church. And, some of us had good times and bad times over the past 3 years. But it's that relationship with God that keeps us grounded, that keeps us in the fight, that keeps our word worthy.
Yes.
Our promises mean something, our handshakes mean something. And, and definitely some of us, have needed to clean up our mouths too, right? A little bit of God training helps you, like just moderate the F-bombs and, keep your mouth together. And so it's been that relationship that we've had as a community. But even when the community's not there and you're feeling all alone, it's your relationship with God that's going to carry you through this, this new normal, which is like abnormal and strange and weird, whatever we're doing here. But thank God for God. Like,
yes,
thanks
that's
God,
right.
You're holding us, you're talking about like that high, that is what is keeping us in the game.
That is key. I think that's key.
Yeah.
To all of this trouble, because if we don't have God at the highest of everything we do, then something else will be at the highest, and it won't be. It won't be worthy, right? It won't be
It'll
worthy.
be money. It'll be career. It will, people who are like atheists,
power.
They still, they love their false idols, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think it's interesting that it was your relationship with God developed when it was kind of just between you and him at that point. It's like, my life is in your hands, and, and I don't know what it was like for you. I didn't.
That's what it was like. My life is in your hands. That's what it was like.
Right? Because it's not in mine. And these doctors, I guess, are your angels doing the best that they can for me. But even they are human and have limits to what they can do. And so, and your husband was sick, and I'm sure your kids felt like to a degree helpless. And so it's like, okay, I guess it's just us two in this hospital bed right now. And, and I'm going to trust you that we're going to get through this. And, and that was all and that was your boat in the storm, right? Here you are.
Yeah. And that is our boat in the storm. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so and that's how we're going to keep on going. And I'm just sort of thinking about like the freedom movement and where it's going to keep going. I don't know. You know, do we start our own political party? You know, what I often ask God, what are my next steps? What are my next steps? And you know, recently he's like, call Eva Vlardingenbroek, and I'm like, okay, so that's my next step. Okay, tells me what to do, right? And so yeah, and it was a good one.
But that's all you can do is the next right step. That keeps you out of fantasy land, you know, because imagining what could be, it's like, no, just the next right step. That's it.
Right. Yeah. So it's been an incredible journey. It's been an incredible experience. You know, I now have an event company where what is the objective of what we're trying to do with Christine and Eva? It's called Make It Your Business Tour. So, you know, I've always considered myself an hopium dealer ever since the convoy. We were dealing in hope. And I want to continue that, is that we're giving you hope by talking about the tools that we can use as individuals to take our power back, to take our communities back. And that means some people are going to be called to run for municipal government. Some are going to be called to be school board trustees. There's a group called Veterans for Freedom, and they're promoting, they call them FOB farms, or forward operating base farms, freedom farms, where like 4 or 5 different families come together. You have the chickens, you grow the lettuce, you know, you do the canning or what have you. And then they've created food security amongst their households. So no matter what happens out there, they have food security. And so these are local, you know, ground initiatives that people can do. And this is how they can make it their business. Some people are called to run, you know, and that's their calling on their life. You know, I'm going to run and I'm going to lead, you know, on a municipal level or provincial or federal. And some people are called to do that, but other people, that might not be it. It might be school board trustee, or it might just be just be in the audience and attending these school board meetings. Because for so long we had it so good, nobody was paying attention and nobody went. And so they could actually pass all sorts of crazy motions because there was nobody there to listen. They're like, it's passed, and it's passed. And so next thing you know, we've got boys and girls bathrooms because nobody was paying attention. So now we're far more aware and far more awake. And now there's definitely, maybe the federal government is captured and lost. Perhaps that's the case. And maybe you know, the provinces aren't too far behind. Some are better than others. But where the people of Canada still have a chance is on a municipal level, and that we can take our communities back, and we can take our school boards back, and we can, before that is run by the globalists or what have you. No, this is where we can hold the line. And there are definitely things and initiatives that we can create that suit our own community, suit our own climate. It's different in northern BC than it is in Newfoundland. Like, there's different elements at play, but we do things that are right for our own local areas. And that is something, that's what they can't take away from us, right? Once we have solid communities, well, they can't break that. Like they can in big cities. It's so easy to break people in big cities, right? Nobody knows each other. They're all divided. Nobody shares the same values. But, you know, what is that country singer? Try that in a small town. Try that in a small town. You know, see what you can do in a small town. So I'm still a big believer, and I'm like I'm faithful for what we can do as individuals, and that we are our own rescuers. There's no politician who's going to rescue me. Bethan's going to rescue Bethan and her family. And if we get good at that, maybe we can rescue some friends. And that's basically the best that we can do. You know, work with amazing people like Christine Anderson, like Eva, like yourself, and you know, and see how we can shake this globalist apple tree and see what comes out.
That's a plan. That sounds like
Yeah.
a
Okay.
plan.
Awesome.
Okay,
Awesome.
awesome.
All right.
I'm glad you have a
Great.
plan. That's good.
I got a plan for us. Stick with me, Tammy. I got you.
That's good.
We'll just make sure your credit card works and we're going places.
Okay. Deal.
Deal. That's so funny. Anyways, thank you for this opportunity. This has
My
been
pleasure.
great.
I've been looking forward to it. It was really nice to talk to you.